Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to everyone. How is everyone today?
Good afternoon, Prof. So far, okay.
Welcome to MCO 3.0. Hopefully,
Prof.
inshallah, this will be the last of the MCOs. Let's hope, let's pray. Are there any students still on campus, or has everybody gone home? Anyone? Anybody know? Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure either. Well, I hope everyone is doing okay. I hope all of your families are okay, safe, healthy. Every day now we get more and more messages about people that either we work with or people from family, friends of family, and stuff like that who are being affected by this by the virus. So it doesn't look like it's going anywhere soon. But hopefully the country can increase its rate of vaccination. Hopefully by June and July, we'll have a lot more activity regarding vaccines. In fact, that's a really good topic actually for community development, because of now the government is planning to include more community-based practitioners like GPs, for example, to administer vaccines, right? So now we're getting into COVID-19. The vaccination program is now getting into at the community level. It's moving down to the community level, right? So I think we'll probably start to see a lot more community involvement in the vaccine drive. That's going to be, I think, increasing quite a bit soon. So if any of you, I mean, if you're interested, maybe you may want to consider that for your project, even for your assignment too. It'd be really interesting to see how it happens, because this is, of course, an unprecedented event. First time we've ever had this kind of thing happen. So to see how communities, do it, how they implement it. So I'm just waiting for everyone to get online. So why don't you guys all go ahead and, for those of you who are here, go ahead and you can do the attendance. Click on the attendance for today. Get that out of the way. So we are now into week 10. Semester's moving right along. And so far, I've given you guys a lot of work. I've given you guys a lot of assignments, a lot of small assignments. So I'm aware of that, and I don't mean to be just giving you work for the sake of giving you work. But as I've mentioned previously in many classes, I think during this kind of a period we're in, online classes and MCOs and whatnot, I think it's probably better. At least that's just my estimation. That's my opinion, is that it's better for the students to have more independent work rather than having a lot of time online for lectures. So I don't know if you guys agree or you disagree. You'd prefer just to sit here for 3 hours and listen to me lecture. I certainly would not want that. I don't know how you feel about it. Would anybody like to share your thoughts on that? I'd be really interested to know what you guys think. I'm kind of making an assumption, actually, by doing that. But just based on what I've learned so far from the whole experience, now we're into our third semester of online classes. So, what I mean, does anybody have anything you want to share? Any opinion about that? Do you prefer doing more sort of independent work offline? Do you prefer to do to be online more, listening to lectures? Anybody want to share your opinion? I'm just really curious to know. You can write it in the chat box if you want. let's hear from our students. Come on, students, let me hear from you. Who wants to start? It usually takes one person has to start. Where's Hadi? If Hadi was here, he would start, but I don't see Hadi's name yet. Anyone? Fikia? Fikia, do you have an opinion about that?
Prof.
No preference.
For me personally, I prefer to sit in class for 3 hours rather than give assignments, because yeah,
Okay.
sebab assignment beratur.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's good. I'm glad you said that. I appreciate your honesty and how about the form or the type of learning that you do in the class? So do you like lecturing? Do you like listening to lectures, for example?
Listening to lectures and also some discussions.
Some discussions. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else want to share?
Hi, Prof.
Hi, Ashma.
From my opinion, I agree with Vikia, because we can for the assignment, most of the subject give us assignments, so there will be a lot of assignments. So
right.
For the lecture, I suggest to be less lecture, but more with group discussion or doing quiz or Kahoot. That's for my opinion.
It's thank you. Do you go by Ashma or Hani?
People call me Chema actually.
Okay. What do your lecturers call you?
Again?
What do your lecturers usually refer to you as? Your other lecturers?
The other lecturers.
What do they call you?
The lecturers call me Chema.
Oh, Chema. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your response. Yeah, but what's interesting, I mean, I get a lot of students that say that they like discussion, but oftentimes when we open up the class to discussion, students often seem disengaged, like they're not really interested in discussing. So that is definitely one of my preferred ways of conducting classes, is to have discussion. And if you sit in my graduate level classes, the class is almost entirely discussion. I let students present and then we discuss. But I find the undergraduate students tend to be a little bit more disengaged in discussion. But I do notice that sometimes you just need to be a little bit provoked. Like if I call on a few people, then suddenly, people wake up and then, they start discussing. So yeah, but that's good feedback. I'm glad you shared that. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's true. I mean, online learning, I think watching, videos of case studies and different types of things like that are good, because, we can't be out there, experiencing these things. So the next best thing is to actually view it, to actually watch it. So that is true. I think that's good feedback. Everybody likes Kahoot quizzes. Okay. All right. So today, thank you very much for your feedback, everyone. Today I'm going to respond directly to your to your interest. So today there's no more. So today no assignments. Okay. So I've given you quite a bit recently. So I don't really think we need. See, that's the thing. I don't really think lecture. I don't think I need to give you, or lectures need to give you guys long assignments, but just I prefer like short assignments that are reflective. Like they force you to kind of think about your own experiences, and because I think self knowledge is a really important part of an undergraduate program, where you guys are learning about yourselves, because especially in something like community development, where you are out there, supposed to be out there working with people, you know, and this is also true for HRD. You're out there working with people. You really have to know yourselves. You have to know your strengths, your weaknesses, your fears, you know, your hopes, your expectations, what you're good at, what you're not so good at, what makes you comfortable, what makes you uncomfortable. You know, so like the assignment about the 8 habits that you guys did, I was really impressed. You guys gave some really good answers, very reflective, and I can see you're very much in tune with yourselves, which is really good to see. I feel good, as you know, from our program's perspective, you know, the HRD program. I mean, I can see by the way many of you answered that you have given thought to these things, which is really good. It's a very important part of learning, is learning about yourselves. And so to see that you have that kind of self-awareness, I thought was really good. So I do want to look at those answers a little bit in a few minutes. Yeah, lectures can be really, they can be tiring, you know, online, both for the students and the lecturer, you know. So, but they are necessary, you know. There are certain times where we do need to lecture. We need to transmit, you know, certain information, and sometimes the easiest way is just through lecture. But of course, that shouldn't be the only way. So that is a good point, Jesse. And so I tried to balance. I tried to balance as much as possible. Okay, so in that spirit, let's first start with a little quiz. Not a quiz. This is not a quiz. What am I talking about? Let's just start with a quick poll. Okay, I had this poll. That's not the poll. That's Osman. I had this poll that I made. So if you guys have your phones near you, I think you need your phone, but we're gonna do a Mentimeter, quick Mentimeter presentation, a quick Mentimeter poll. Okay, so if you could just go to menti.com, all right, as you can see there, and type in this code at the top, 9505-5775. I just have 2 questions for you guys. So this is, you know, it's good that if we start thinking beyond the pandemic, you know, start thinking about when things get back to normal, inshallah, and you guys you're thinking again about your futures. I just have 2 questions that I want you to answer. So if you could choose after graduation, in which sector would you prefer to work? Okay, and you can this one you can answer for all 4 of these options. You can indicate 1 to 5. Okay, so strongly disagree and strongly agree. Okay, so just go ahead and, if you would, go to menti.com, and you can put in the code and then put in your answers. Let's see. Just make sure it works. Okay, we got 15 so far. Okay, 17, 18, 19. Oh, I think I need to. Okay, 22. All right, looks like the majority of you are, well, we've got 32 online, and we've got 22 have answered. Anyone else want to give your answer before I move on? Okay, so you can see the majority are, if you could choose, you would choose to work in a large private company, followed by government, followed by small private company, then self-employed. Okay, well, 2.3 for self-employed is pretty impressive, actually. It's pretty good. Okay, so for HRD, this is not surprising that the majority of you are would prefer a large private company. That's quite, I think, quite normal. And then now, if we did this survey maybe 10, 15 years ago, we would probably see more around the first one, public and government. But I think because things have changed, the job market has changed. So now I think, yeah, there's more of an interest in working in the private sector. That's for sure. So we've seen this trend over the years in HRD. Okay, second question. If you could choose upon graduation, where would you prefer to work? Overseas, KL, Klang Valley, a rural area, or a city in Malaysia other than KL? Go ahead. Okay, we got 19 so far. Others? How would you answer this question? Oh, very interesting. Okay. I think we got about 23 from last time. Okay, so interesting. So the majority, although it's close between overseas, Klang Valley, and city other than KL, the winner is a city in Malaysia other than KL. So I assume many of you would prefer to go back to maybe your hometowns or cities that are near your hometowns and your home states. But it's interesting that KL is not first, because I think again this is a change from past. I think in the past we would have had a lot more answers for KL. And rural area got 2.2. That's not bad. It's pretty good. Overseas, okay. You can see the spread of responses here. It's very interesting. So people either seem to really love KL or hate KL. Rural areas, okay. So you can see the spread in terms of the majority of comments, responses. It's this one here. This one got 9, and then this one got 4. Okay, interesting. So would anyone like to share why would you prefer to work in a city other than KL? Anyone give me a little insight here? Why did you answer that way? Anyone? No one?
For me, because
Yeah, go ahead, Vicky.
quite high.
Oh, living expenses.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shazrina also said that, and Shazwani. Yeah, sure. Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I think that has changed over the years. I think KL has now just become so expensive that, many new graduates can't afford it. Simple as that. Whereas in the past, I think it was different. especially like our HRD students, because most of our HRD students, our students traditionally have no problem getting jobs, finding jobs after graduation. And so many of them in the past were able to afford to live in KL, but now it's like you guys are saying, I think this is definitely a trend we can see. So it's very interesting. Okay. What would be your second choice of city? I'm just curious. What would be some of the other cities you'd be interested to work in Malaysia? After KL, what is like the most desired city to work in? Johor? Johor Bahru? JB? Ipoh? Anyone?
For Prof.
Yeah, Hadi.
Okay, so for myself, I think I prefer my hometown kot. Penang.
Penang.
Penang, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that many people would prefer to be, if not KL, they probably want to be near their hometown or at least in the city closest to their hometown. Jesse, yeah, good. Okay, I choose rural area. Help the communities. Oh, good. Great. For city other than KL because of high cost of living. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So that makes sense. Sure. Well, it's great that you want to help the rural communities. That's fantastic. Well, this is the course for you. I hope we're helping you prepare for that, Jesse, inshallah. Okay, so I just want to start the class with that, just to, again, better get to know you guys and where you're at. So let me just pull up our Puja Blast for today. Oh, I have to get out of this thing. Oh, sorry, Shazrina, I didn't see your comment. Okay, Johor, maybe because I saw lots of big houses there. Maybe the salary is quite big, or Seremban. Oh, okay, so you're near Seremban. So yeah, so that's usually that's often what happens in countries where, certain cities become very expensive and people have to find alternatives. So what happens is that other cities, which are small, usually smaller, they become like trendy, more popular, especially for young people. So you see this a lot in Western countries as well. So like I grew up near New York City, which is of course the biggest city in the US. I grew up just about 30 minutes outside of New York City. And so like when I was growing up, New York was like not that popular for young people to live in because it was too expensive. But then as at that time, salaries started to increase, cost of living sort of averaged out. And so a lot of young people started to move into New York City. Right. So it became very young. But then as I got older and then before I came to Malaysia, I noticed that the trend was the opposite. And people were starting to leave New York City because the cost of living got too high. So this happens everywhere. It's a pretty common phenomenon. And it's very trendy. Like it happens at different times. So now it's like, KL is too expensive, but who knows, in 10 years, maybe people will be moving back into KL. Who knows? All right. I can't get out of this. Okay, no, I can. Puja Blast. All right, can you see Puja Blast now on the screen?
Cannot.
Okay. So week 10. Wow, it's already week 10. Okay, so just a quick announcement about the slides. So in the Puja Blast itself, I have added 2 sets of slides. So last week we covered the first 3 parts of program planning. We did up to work plans. And so today we're going to cover the last 2. However, I'm not going to discuss part 4 in class because it's mostly just examples, okay, of activities, program activities, which you guys are familiar with a lot of these program activities, giving talks and trainings and so many different types of activities. But I have so the slides have a lot of examples in them. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to give those to you in the Puja Blast, and you can use those for your assignment too. When you have to report it on your plan for activities, you can refer to the slides there, to think about what are the most appropriate activities. Okay. But I'm not going to discuss it in class. There's not really a whole lot to discuss in class. Like I said, it's a lot of just examples of different types of programs. But today, we will be discussing the last topic, which is evaluation. Okay, so evaluation we will cover today, inshallah, in class. All right, is that clear? Any questions about that?
Yes, clear, Prof.
Okay, thanks, Hadi. So just that. Yeah, now I want to look at your Padlet answers. So this is a really interesting exercise. I like giving this exercise. I've given it in the past to hear what students have to say about themselves. And so, like I said, I think you guys, a lot of you gave very good answers. Interesting. I learned quite a lot about you guys. And what I really learned is that I learned about many of you, and I think when I thought about this more, I sort of realized that if we look at this diagram, okay, this is from the article. Okay, so you look at this diagram of the habits, right? So you have the 8 habits here, and they break down the habits into the personal level or intrapersonal level, which is these first 3. Okay, then the organizational level, right, which is habit 4. And then or it's sort of cross-organizational or agency level, which would be number 5. And then number 6, 7, and 8, 6, 7, 8 are more at the community and society level. All right. And so the majority of you, the vast majority of you, if you guys look, and you can all access that pad that you can see, but the vast majority, when it came to your strengths, it was somewhere in here. Most of you were you reported that your strengths lied in these first 4 habits, especially the first 3. All right. And then your challenges or your weaknesses, limitations, whatever you want to call it, lied mostly in here with these last 4. Why? Can anybody tell me why you think that is? Why might that be? Because I was trying to think about myself, and why would that be? And I have come to some conclusions, but I just want to ask you directly. So why, Kanapa? Why are these for most of you strengths and these for most of you consider weaknesses? You can just reflect back. Yeah.
Yeah, Prof. I think maybe because of how we are raised, maybe.
Okay.
Family, yeah.
So your
yeah.
upbringing.
Yes, upbringing.
Okay, and what about your upbringing would be the cause of that?
Because of it, basically, maybe for my side, I think I prefer habit. I think I did 5. I think I did 5. Yeah. So basically, I did 5. So maybe the upbringing for my side, I think my parents, they maybe put a little bit of concern regarding to how me and my brothers are, how they want to maybe cooperate with others. Yeah, I think
Interesting.
maybe how we are going to what you call it?
Okay.
To produce a significant relationship between others, and how I think that, yeah.
All right. Okay, that's interesting, Hadi. Another observation I made is that there are only a few of the men in the class, young men in the class, answered the assignment. Like Hadi, you were one, and I know Lee Sang was another one. But most of the guys, they reported their strengths lying actually in the second half, in the bottom half. You know, they're more social or extroverted habits. You build coalitions and partnerships with people, meaning that you're not afraid to go out and make relationships, to socialize, build social capital, right? They're more, they use this one now. 6, 7, and 8 are very high habits. They require a lot of skill, and I would even argue they require a lot of experience. So it's not surprising that many of you put those as challenges because you haven't had that much experience yet, right? As you get more experience, like for example, number 8, many of you put number 8 as a challenge or as your weakness, and that's obviously understandable. It's not easy to try and motivate other people. right? To build internal locus of control in others means you are able to really transform them. You're really able to influence them where they begin to do things on their own. So that's a very high skill, and it requires a lot of experience and a certain type of personality as well. So that's really interesting. But the fact that many of the guys put their strengths in the bottom 4, like how do you mention 5? Somebody, one or two of the other men in the class mentioned 5 as their strength, and most of the women in the class mentioned their strengths in the first 4, and so that also kind of relates to introvert and extrovert personality types. Do most of you consider yourselves introverts? I'm just curious, because culturally, there's cultural elements to that too. Okay, so Jesse in the chat box said, maybe because some people, they know their own personality, their own strengths. So they think that when it involves interaction or communication with other people, they think that is their weakness, because some people, they are introvert. Yeah. So they assume that it's better for them to not involve in interaction with other people. This happens maybe because of experience. Yeah, I think it's a very good insight. Very good insight, Jesse. I think there is definitely a lot related there to personality type. A lot of this reflects personality type too. Because I would have answered myself, even at my age. I would have answered similar to a lot of the women in the class. I would have said my strengths definitely lie in the first 4, and my sort of limitations or my weaknesses lie in the second half, the bottom 4. Okay. And yes, I think it does reflect also those who are very much in touch with themselves on a regular basis. Their strengths would be in things like understanding their position in the greater scheme of things, where they fit in, being able to empower yourself rather than relying on others to, for your sort of sense of empowerment, taking time out for self-renewal, for working on yourself, stuff like that. Habit 4 was interesting. Many of you, it was sort of kind of split. A lot of people put habit 4 as a strength. Others put it as a weakness. So 4 was kind of interesting. Some noise going on in the house. Okay. Anyone else have any? Hang on one sec. Some drama going on in my house. Sorry. Working from home can be a challenge sometimes. Okay. Okay, so let me switch back to the yeah. So I'm not going to read all these obviously, but just to sort of scroll down. So you can see 1, habit 3, habit 6, habit 1, habit 8, habit 1, habit 8. Okay. 2, and this is 6, I believe. Yeah, 2 and 6. 2 and 4. Okay, that was who? Oh, fine. 2 and 8. 3 and 6. So you can see there's definitely a pattern here. Anissa, 3 and 5. 1 and 5. 1 and 6. Trying to find. I know Hadi was 5. 5 and. Trying to find the other men. So you can see there's definitely a pattern here. It's very interesting. Okay, so but they were very informative. Prof, how can we change the introvert personality? Actually, that's a very good question. There's a great book called Quiet. And especially if you're an introvert, and I'm an introvert. I know my personality is, I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. In fact, after reading that book, I realized that I didn't finish it. Actually, I should go back and finish it. But what I did read in the book is that actually nobody is fully an introvert or fully an extrovert. We're all a mix, actually. We're all sort of combination. But we tend to have more of one or the other. So I'm definitely I'm more of an introvert. And maybe many of you are also more introverted, you know. In fact, maybe there's also cultural elements to it, you know, like maybe Malaysians tend to be more introverted, as you know, from a cultural perspective. You know, your culture is more of an introverted culture. And so I don't think there's a need to change. I don't think you should think about changing. I think what it is we should, and I think I've tried to do this over the years. Like I said before about self-knowledge, try to understand yourself better, be more aware of yourself by being honest with yourself, right? Checking in with yourself, doing a lot of reflection, and then just try to improve on those things that you feel like you need to improve on, right? And a lot of times that requires hard work. In other words, what it really requires is taking yourself out of your comfort zones purposely so that you can improve in those areas, you know? Like, for example, many people of all cultures, this is true universally, many people hate speaking in front of groups. They hate public speaking, okay? It's just something that a lot of people have a really hard time with. And I've never been very fond of public speaking, even though I'm a lecturer. I have to lecture. It's my job. So I've had to really learn how to overcome that. It's part fear. It's part just I don't really feel like it's something I'm good at, you know. And so you just have to keep working at it by doing it, by putting yourself in that position and forcing yourself to do it and try to learn how to be better at it, you know. So Shazrina, I don't think it's a question of changing. I think it's a question of just, you know, understanding what things, whether it's the introverted things or the extroverted things, what things you need to improve in, and then working hard and trying to improve in those things. Okay. And really taking yourself out of your comfort zone. Like if you know that you're not good at networking, you know, learn from somebody that's good at networking and then try and do it and try and practice it, even though it's hard, even though you don't like to do it, even though you're not good at it at first. But by doing it more and more, you'll get better at it. Okay, so I think that's what's important. Don't try and change who you are. You know what I mean? If you're an introvert, there's nothing bad about being an introvert. There's nothing good about being an extrovert. But of course, we live in a global culture, a society now that really it rewards extroverts. Extroverts now, you know, even our education system, you have to be good at public speaking, and you have to be creative, and you have to be outgoing, and you have to be. Those are all aspects of extroverted personality. You know what I mean? So the extrovert often gets a lot of the credit and gets a lot of the reward nowadays. We see, like all these influencers on social media. They're very extroverted people. They're very outgoing. They like to express themselves a lot, charismatic, etc. But if you read the book called Quiet, there's a lot of really interesting stuff there about the importance of introverts and how important introverts are, especially in organizations, because these are the people that do a lot of the hard grunt work, a lot of the thinking work, a lot of the intellectual work, right? So even in UPM, even in JPPL, I have colleagues who are very extroverted. They're very good at, going on TV and talking about certain things and representing the department and the faculty by being very very public, very outspoken. But when we have meetings about research, for example, we have strategic meetings, it's the introverts that are giving a lot of the meaningful feedback. Do you know what I mean? So there's really a need for both. Okay, Jesse said, maybe we can change it through experience and put a belief in our own potential that we can do better. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to believe in yours. I mean, we should all believe in ourselves. We should all believe that, through that intention, hard work, and of course, by the support you get, that, yeah, of course, we can learn. We can learn. Inshallah, you can do it. There's absolutely no reason why you can't do it. The only thing is that a lot of people give up. They don't try, and they give up. And they say, oh, it's not meant to be, you know, that's just an excuse. You know, you don't know if it's meant to be until you've exercised every possible option, every possible opportunity. Only then you'll know if it's not meant to be. Okay, so until you've reached that point where you've tried everything, literally everything, you don't know if it's meant to be until it's actually not meant to be by exercising every possible opportunity. Okay, so don't use that as an excuse. You know, you just try once. You say, oh, I know a lot of our Muslim brothers and sisters like to use that excuse, reda. No, they make one half-hearted effort at something and they say, oh, reda, I just accept it. It's not meant to be. but you didn't engage in the jihad of actually struggling and trying and making an effort until you've made that sincere effort, real sincere effort, and you've tried everything. Only then can you say, oh, it's meant to be, not meant to be. So yeah, belief in yourself, belief that it can happen, and really getting yourself out of your comfort zone. You know, I went through a phase when I was like your guys' age, early 20s. I was just trying to learn everything I could, put myself in every situation I could, just to really understand myself better and to really improve in certain things. I was just in that adventurous kind of phase, you know, of my life where I just wanted to try different things. I really wanted to try things that took me out of my comfort zone, right? And I really learned a lot about myself that way. And then I learned how to improve in certain ways, improve in certain areas. So it is hard, but it really pays off in the end, to do that kind of hard work. Anyone else? You want to share? By the way, since I see Shazrina, Shazrina, I don't mean to embarrass you in front of everyone, but I see your name on my screen in the chat box, and I just want to mention that your assignment 1. By the way, I have not finished marking all the assignment ones. They're all very good. I mean, so far they're all quite good. I haven't had any that have been really what I would consider to be poor. But Shazrina, you did an excellent job. Okay, so I'm going to embarrass you in front of everyone. You did a really excellent job on your assignment 1. Okay, just to publicly mention that, since I see your name here. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Anything else on the habits? Okay. Nothing. Oh, it shows you another question. What's the difference between Omnivert and Ambivert? I am honestly not that familiar with those terms, but I assume, well, Omnivert would mean that you sort of encompass both characteristics just by you looking at the prefix omni. Like, for example, the word omnipotent, we often talk about Allah, we describe Allah as omnipotent, right? God is omnipotent. So all-knowing and all-capable, right? Capable of all things. So omni usually means all. So Omnivert probably means that you encompass both. And that's quite common, okay? It's what, like I said, it's quite common to have both. And so again, you can learn, you can acquire those traits, those characteristics. It's not something you cannot learn. Like you can, when you need to be, you can be extroverted, right? Even though you're an introvert by nature, but when you need to be an extrovert, like I need to be an extrovert when I'm teaching class, I need to be, even though it's not the most comfortable thing for me, right? Or ambivert would mean you're like ambidextrous. You can use either one at any given time. I'm assuming that's what it means. Okay. So like when I need to be an introvert, when I have to have those qualities, when I need to sit down and work by myself on something for a really long time, or I need to really just cut myself off from the world and really concentrate on doing an assignment or something, I can do that. But then when I need to be in a group, exchanging ideas, expressing myself, etc., I can also do that. So that I think is probably what it means, probably what it refers to. Okay. Yeah, so you can do that. These things that they can be learned, but it requires work, right? And it often means, like I said, taking yourself out of your comfort zone, doing things that are not comfortable, and that's hard for a lot of people. A lot of people they don't want to take themselves out. They like their comfort zones. That's why they're called comfort zones. They're comfortable, and so we don't want to leave our comfort zone. But that's where the intellect has to take over, right? So we understand this from our spiritual psychology. That's where the intellect has to take over And the intellect, even though the nafs doesn't want to do it, the intellect says, no, you have to do this because of the knowledge, you know that it's good for you, right? Yeah, exactly. Yes, it is hard to leave our comfort zones. It's one of the hardest things. And we live in an age where everything is designed to feed our comfort zones. You know, everything is fast now. I mean, look at MCO. Go online. You can shop in a matter of seconds. You can get anything you want delivered to your door. You can watch movies 24 hours a day. Everything is geared towards our comfort zones, right? So it's getting harder and harder to leave comfort zones because everything now is designed for our comfort, right? So yeah, you do need courage. Yeah, absolutely, you need courage. And that's why if you have people to support you to do that, it helps, right? If you don't have people to support you, then you have to have that motivation, that courage to do it, right? So, but yes, you're right. It does require courage, no doubt. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I think that's one of the, you know, you look at people who have achieved a certain level of success in the, at least in the dunya, in this life, you look at who have achieved a certain level of success. I think these are the kind of people, if you look at their stories, you listen to them, you know, many of them will say things like, you know, that's what they did. They took a chance, or they tried, you know, they set their mind on to do something, and they spent, you know, a certain amount of time, certain number of years just really working at it. You know, even though it was hard at first, and, you know, and that's what they did. They were courageous. They tried new things, or they took chances, or they just really struggled with something, you know, for a long period of time, and they were able to achieve it. Another good book, if you're interested. So that first book about introverts was called Quiet, and I forgot the author's name. I can find it though. Another good book is called Grit. So if you've studied grit, you'll know that Angela Duckworth, who's a psychologist from Stanford in the US, she did this multi-year study where she looked at what were the characteristics, very simple question. She just looked at what were the characteristics of successful people from all different fields, like athletes, scientists, business people. And she really wanted to find out, was there a common set of characteristics that these people shared? And she came up with the theory of grit. And grit is essentially just, you have a goal, an objective, and you just persevere, work and work and work to achieve that objective. It basically, it's istiqamah, it's perseverance, it's hard work, it's staying the course, right? She said that these people were not any more talented or gifted than anybody else. They didn't have any special, you know, really, they didn't have anything that was, could be considered to be, you know, like these unique talents, and everything just came so easy to them. No, she said they just were determined, they worked hard, and they worked a long time at achieving what they want to achieve. And so that's why she calls it grit, right? And so really anybody can do that. You know, we can all do that. It's just a matter of how strong is our niyat, our intention, and how determined are we to see it through, right? Commitment. It's a commitment to whatever it is that we're doing. Okay. So these are two really good books that, you know, during the, you know, obviously now you guys are very busy with schoolwork, but, you know, during the semester break, you know, go online, I think you can get these online if you can't buy them a hard copy. They're really good books to read. For those of you who are introverts, definitely read Quiet. It's a really good book about introverts. Okay, sorry, I've been blabbing on for quite a while. So anything else? Questions? Okay, so I forgot what was next. Oh yeah. So now I'm going to show, because you guys said you liked watching videos and stuff, so I think now we'll show a video. Next video. All right, can you see the YouTube screen? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I just want. So this is I'm going to show this video. Now this is in relation to our topic for today, which is evaluation. Okay, so evaluating community development programs. All right. And this is about a 10-minute video of an actual community development program of a rural community in the Philippines. Okay, and they did this very interesting program. And so I want you to just watch this video. It's only about 10 minutes, and there's just a couple of questions we're going to discuss afterwards. Okay, So related to evaluation. Okay, so carefully just pay attention to these two questions here. What role did evaluation play in the project? And what were the different types of evaluation that were used? Okay, so often when it comes to evaluating programs, we often just think of the evaluation done at the end, right? So was the program successful? Did you guys like the course? How was your professor? All that stuff. So we think of that end evaluation, which is called, anybody know the name? Anybody know the name of that type of evaluation that occurs at the end of the program? Maybe from your other courses, you've heard this before. There's a name for it. No one knows? Well, it's referred to as a summative evaluation. Summative. Okay. So we have the summative. So the summative evaluation is, as the word implies in English, it's a summation, or it's a sum. When you sum things up at the end, you get that final tally, that final result. Okay, so summative evaluation. Okay. Now, most of the time we think of summative evaluation when we think about evaluation, but there are other types of evaluation that occur at different times. Okay, so if you took my youth development class, you may remember this from our class. We talked about evaluating youth programs, right? So that's a similar approach. All right. So just think about these two questions. What role did evaluation play in the project? And then what were the types of evaluation that were used? Okay. And then I'm going to switch screens here. All right. So just have a look at the video.
People mountainous north of the Philippines. Its inhabitants have migrated here in search of land where they can build their homes and feed their families. The people of Pangao are proud and hardworking, but they are also poor. Most families here survive on less than $1 per person per day. In 2011, the community approached the Episcopal Church of the Philippines to help them with a water project. The Episcopal Church of the Philippines is very experienced in helping communities to construct water and sanitation facilities. But the church is also concerned that external intervention brings long-term sustainable benefits to communities and doesn't inadvertently increase the community's reliance on external donors.
They come to us and say that they have heard from neighboring communities that the Episcopal Church has helped them put up a water system that is worth more than $1 million pesos. The church has helped them even with cement, the part of the road going to the community. So they come to us with an expectation that we are give them a lot of resources. The problem has been with sustainability, because the problem is that if you are providing or addressing a need and providing an external input, in the community to address those needs, that will be what people expect. That every time that they have a problem, they have a need, then they will always look forward to an external input to address that. Eventually we realize that the better way of approaching it is the biblical way, which is what's in there, what's in the community, what's the strength of the community, what are the resources of the community that would be able to drive development action there. So asset-based community development is basically looking at those resources, those available resources, and the strengths, capacities of the community, and letting those things drive development action.
There is a new approach being introduced known as the asset-based community development. this we as the staff of this program also attended training at the national office, and then after the training, we also invited some community research volunteers. There were in this place, Pangaw, there were 3 who are interested to join with us.
We have seen that we have a few water supply.
Siya di ng kinmamangan mi
That what push us to go to the development community program of the church.
In may kami naki
We go to attend seminars like the ABCD seminar
kaputa siya di usaay
because it is one of the requirements.
So we consult the community. What are those concerns and suggestions? After that, we take the asset mapping, the household survey, and we list what are the assets that we have in this community.
Through an asset mapping process that the community research volunteers learned in their training, the community began to focus on the strengths and skills that already existed in the community. This approach helped to identify hidden talents among members of the community, as well as to focus on the resources already present in the community, rather than waiting on an external party to come and intervene. Through this process, the community identified the value of their water catchment area and the need to preserve and protect this valuable resource.
Very important din danum aditan sa
Water is very
households every day
important to us because it is what we use every day in our houses. Yes, and also it is important to our plants. So really, it's very important to us.
Para anda kami din watershed may kailangan
the watershed is very important for us to protect because it is the source of the water, and the trees they hold the water, and also that we the community are the one who is safeguarding the watershed from illegal loggers and from those who throw waste in the watershed.
One of the initiatives the community began immediately was a plan to take care of their water catchment area. With help from some external sources, they began a nursery to propagate native trees, which will be used to reforest the watershed area. One of the major community decisions to emerge from the asset-based process was a commitment to raise their own funds within the community to build the new water system, so that the ABM funding could be used by some other community who had a greater need.
Idi nalpas di seminar din na CRPs nung kami idin sa nan plano kami ay
when the seminar of the CRVs were finished and the plan was shown to us, we have seen that maybe we can do this by ourselves. Because when we see it, we have seen that we can plant vegetables and other things, and every harvest we can give to the organization some funds from our harvest so that it will be used in the water works. That's one of the more successful results of our ABCD engagement. People would still say, would still think that that they have failed because what they expected in the beginning was not what they got. So there, among some people, there would still be that feeling. But for them to come up with a collective stand and say, that we can do this in our own is success. This is what we also expected from the process.
The story of Tangao is a testament to the initiative and hard work of the people in this community. It also highlights the importance of the effective community development processes that the Episcopal Church in the Philippines has developed. The challenges of poverty are often harder to overcome than they first appear. ABM's partners bring tools and insight from a vast array of community development experience to ensure that development intervention helps rather than hinders the people who need it most.
Appreciate what you have. It's only when you stop looking at others that you begin to look at yourself, and appreciate what you have and do something with what you have.
Okay, so that's a short video of an interesting community building project, community development project that was done in the Philippines by the church organization in the Philippines. So were you able to catch any aspects or any elements of evaluation in that short video in terms of how they described the program and what they did? Were there any elements or practices related to evaluation in there? Did you catch any?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, so Fikia, for example?
Like so they did the evaluation to find out.
Sorry, Fikia, you got cut off. I didn't hear what you said. Could you repeat that, please?
For them to identify the assets and the resources that they have.
Yeah.
The evaluation.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So just by identifying those assets and those resources. Yeah. So this is asset-based community development. So it sounds a lot like what we talk about in the youth development class, asset-based youth development. So there's also asset-based community development. So yeah, so that was a very important aspect of evaluation was first, and you saw they had those volunteers, and those are volunteers from the community. So this is called participatory evaluation practice. So where the people from the community are actually trained by the organization to conduct this type of assessment. All right. So the outsiders, and we talked about this in previous classes, how sometimes, outside organizations are not very looked upon. They're sort of not always so welcome, or they're not always looked upon with full trust, right? Like who are these outsiders? Why are they here working in our community? So they just come and they train the actual community residents to do their own research, basically, to do their own assessment of the assets and the resources. Okay, so yeah, good, Vicky. I'm glad you picked that up. Anyone else want to elaborate on that, or anything else, any other type of or aspect of evaluation you caught in there? They don't use the word evaluation, okay? So they don't talk about evaluation in that particular segment. Vicky, do you know what the term is for that type of evaluation that you mentioned?
I'm not sure, Prof.
Okay, all right. So we know it's not a summative evaluation. It's not the kind of evaluation that comes at the end of the program, obviously. So there must be another term for it. So that's referred to as formative evaluation, right? Formative evaluation. So I'm just writing these in the chat box so you'll see them. Okay, so formative is what occurs early on in the process rather than at the end of the process. Okay. And that's like this kind of a thing, is assessing assets, assessing resources. Formative can also look at how programs are implemented, is sort of evaluating how the process of how they're being implemented. Okay, rather than at the end, waiting to the end. All right. So there's one other that I want to focus on from the video. One other form of evaluation that was being, they showed video of it where the people were all sort of gathered around discussing the program. Did anybody pick up on what that might be? So this asset-based approach to community development involves the community a lot, right? You saw that? You picked up on that? So that is actually a form of participatory evaluation. So this is not a formal term, participatory evaluation, but it is a practice. It is a practice of good evaluation. Okay, so it is always considered a good practice when you involve the community in the evaluation itself, right? So as they're going along, rolling out the program, they're constantly checking in with the community members, getting their feedback, getting their inputs, making decisions together. All right. Right. And then thinking about, the implications of those decisions and so forth. So this is the participatory approach to not only conducting the program, but also evaluating the program. All right. So there's this formative evaluation, and it incorporates the participation by the community as they're going along and doing it together. Right. And so you have these two elements involved. And they don't even talk about the summative evaluation at the end. All right. But we assume that since this is an organization that has a lot of experience doing community development, of course, we assume that there's also an evaluation at the end. They have the summative evaluation. Okay. So maybe Jesse, in the future, you want to do that kind of work, similar to the group that was in this video, working with the rural communities to try and, help them with support their development efforts. Okay. It's really interesting work, and you could see that. I mean, that little kampong that reminded me of Sabah quite a bit, actually. But those communities, they're not even aware of their own assets, of the resources that exist within the community. It takes an outside organization to come in and show them, really, and to highlight and explain why they're surrounded by all these resources and they don't even realize it. They just think of themselves as this poor community. No one really cares about them. All they have is their little bit of crops and agricultural assets and stuff, but they don't really think of their location itself as an asset, the community as an asset, their agricultural output as an asset. Like they mentioned, the water catchment area is as a major asset. Okay, so they're not even aware. So that's an important role for outside organizations that do community development, for them to come in and help communities to understand, to see these assets. All right, so Jesse, are you up for it? Is Jessie still here? I think she's still here. Jessie? She's not answering. Okay.
Yes, Prof. Yes, Prof.
I was just saying, is this the kind of work that you hope to do later after you graduate? this kind of community development with rural communities?
I'm not sure. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's 12:15. Let's just have a quick break. Get away from the screens for a few minutes. So we'll come back in about 10 minutes.
Okay, Prof.
Okay. All right. Okay, welcome back. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Okay, so in case you're interested, I put the links up for the two books that I mentioned earlier, in case you are interested in reading either of those. So I think the grid book is quite cheap. You can get it on Shopee for just like 16 or 17 ringgit. The other one is a bit more expensive, but anyway, you can check it out on your own if you're interested. Worth reading. Okay, so let's move to the lecture now. So I will just now we'll have our lecture session on evaluation. Okay, so I've uploaded that's not evaluation. I've uploaded the slides to Pujablast, so you can download them there. All right, and so the rest of the class will just we'll present the lecture and then discuss, and then we'll be off. Okay. So, evaluating community development programs. All right. So, I think by now most people know that evaluation is a process of making a judgment on whether a program is really worth doing. Okay. In the realm of community development, I think we don't see a lot of evaluation work. And it's really a shame because evaluation is so important. It's so important when we implement any kind of program, especially if that program is going to be one that gets implemented regularly, like every year or every whatever, every 6 months. Because we really need to know whether the program is successful, and we need to know how we can improve the program. And the only way you can do that is through evaluation. Okay, so evaluation is really, really important. Okay, so whenever you guys do programs, especially in the future in your roles as HRD officers or whatever, always try to include some element of evaluation that's going to help you to improve your program later. Okay, so it doesn't have to be as comprehensive as some of the examples I'm going to give here, but at least that there is something that you can learn, some kind of feedback you can get about the program, right? To know how to improve, all right? Because you don't want to be stuck doing the same failed things over and over again, all right? So what it is that in an evaluation for a community development program, we collect data or evidence, right? In a form of sort of a research form. We do research basically and collect evidence. And then we compare that to some sort of standard or criterion. So we want to look at what is the standard for how many people acquire knowledge in the program. So for example, you're trying to educate the community members on awareness about COVID-19, or the need to follow SOPs or something. And so what percentage of your participants do you want to have acquired that whatever level of knowledge? All right, so that's the standard. So you have that standard, and then you do the evaluation, and you compare what you have observed in the evaluation to that standard to see whether or not you've actually achieved it. Okay. Now, if you've set out to educate 80% of the community about COVID-19, but your evaluation shows that only 30% really acquired the knowledge, then obviously you're not doing something right, or there is some barrier to these people's acquisition of the knowledge. So you need to find out why, right? And so that's another level. That's another level of evaluation that should be done, right? So evaluation should be a continuous process, okay? So I think I've sort of hinted at that earlier on in the class. It's not only done at the end, it should be done something, it is something rather that should be done from the beginning all the way to the end of the program, all right? And it's also very much a learning process, right? They learn. So the participants involved in evaluation and who is going to be involved in evaluation. Who are the participants in an evaluation process?
The community.
Well, if you're doing it really well, yeah, if you're doing evaluation the right way, it should include the community, yes. But often it doesn't. A lot of programs, they don't include the participants in their evaluation, right? So they do it separate from the community. But yeah, that's partly who the participants are. Definitely is the community members. Yeah, volunteers. If there's volunteers involved in the program, definitely want to hear from the volunteers. And what's interesting about volunteers is that volunteers are not like employees, right? Because, like, let's take the video we watched. So you have that NGO, that church-based NGO. They are the ones that are sort of spearheading the project from the outside. But they recruited participants from the community, right, to be involved as researchers and so forth. Okay, so they have the community participation. Now let's just pretend, just for the sake of exercise, let's pretend that there were volunteers. Volunteers are often the ones that are going to give you the most honest feedback about the program because they have nothing to lose. They have no stake in the process. They're not working there. So they're not like, like you guys, sometimes you're afraid to give an honest evaluation of your lectures because you're afraid it will come back to you. The lecturers will, sort of take their revenge out on you or something. For volunteers, they don't really care about that because they have no vested interest in the program, right? They're just volunteers. If the program, people that run the program, if they don't like the volunteers' response, so what? They don't, the volunteers are like, okay, fine. It's like they're not losing anything. They're not going to get they're not going to get fired from their job. All right. So they often make the best volunteers for evaluation. So that's a really good answer, Farhana, is volunteers. So if you have volunteers, yes, they should also be involved. Who else is involved? Yes, we have volunteers. We have the community participants, our community, participants. Who else?
Maybe the person who organized the program or activities.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So those who conduct the program or those who are coordinating the program, so this could be an outside group, could be an outside group, could be from the government, could be an NGO. So of course they're going to spearhead the evaluation. All right. Now we have to separate out. There's two different outside groups. If you have an outside group that's running the program, like an NGO, like for example, that church-based NGO, they may not want to actually do the evaluation though, because of the fear of what? If they're running the program and they're also doing the evaluation, there's what kind of risk there?
Bias.
Yeah, exactly, Nabila. That was the very word I was hoping you'd say, bias, right? So there's the possibility of bias. Okay, so often a good NGO or a government agency, they will call in another outside group to do an evaluation. Okay, I was actually before I came to Malaysia, I was in the U.S. I was working for an NGO in Washington D.C., which is the capital of the U.S. And I worked for an NGO there, and we did a very big evaluation of our programs, our NGO's programs, and so we paid a lot of money. Actually, the foundation that was our funder paid a lot of money to have another outside group come in and evaluate us. And so these evaluators, they spent like 2 weeks in our agency collecting all kinds of data, doing interviews with us. They would go and observe our programs. They would do surveys with the participants of the programs. They collected a lot of data. And at the end of the day, they reported back to us about their findings of the evaluation, and they had some very hard findings, very harsh findings about so many problems. There were so many problems with our programs. And most of it had to do with the fact that we were claiming to do certain things that we actually weren't doing. So like we claim to be, building the community and, developing young people and, helping young people to do this, that, and the other thing. And when they did the evaluation, they found that actually it wasn't really happening. Okay, so either we were not being honest with ourselves, or we just didn't realize that our programs were not that effective. Okay, and so that's the important thing about getting another outside person or group to do an evaluation, is that they can take that unbiased, objective approach to it. Okay, so yeah, so that's a good answer, Nabila. It is definitely about bias. Okay, so we want to avoid that, obviously. Okay, so I got too many windows open here, sorry. Evaluation, as you can see there, is a process of measuring the performance of a program. Okay, and so it's going to look at both strengths and weaknesses. All right, it's not going to focus only on either one. It's going to look at both. It's going to try and give you a balanced picture of what is going on in this program. Okay, so it can be measured quantitatively and qualitatively. All right, what is? Can you give me an example of a quantitative evaluation? How is a quantitative evaluation usually done? By using what? Who knows? Feedback form. Okay. Well, feedback form can actually be either quantitative or qualitative. All depends on how you, yeah. So Jesse, survey is what type of evaluation? Yep, questionnaire, survey, that's really the same thing. A questionnaire and a survey are pretty much the same thing. They're just two words for the same thing. And those are examples of what type of evaluation, quanti or quali? If I give you guys a survey to fill out, that's a form of quantitative analysis, a quantitative evaluation, or qualitative evaluation. Do you know?
Quanti.
Yeah, it's usually a quantitative evaluation. Okay, questionnaires, surveys, yeah, which use Likert scales. So Likert scales are, state your level of agreement, like I do with you early in the class today, right? On a scale 1 to 5, what is your level of agreement with this? So that's a quantitative survey. Okay, so quantitative survey. So that's a quantitative approach to evaluation. So what would be a qualitative type of evaluation? If we want to do a qualitative, what might be some of the ways that we collect the data for that kind of evaluation?
Maybe interview or some group discussion.
Yes, very good. Okay. Yeah, very good. I see in the chat box there. Also, yeah. So interviews, focus group discussions, they're called. They're a form of group interviews. We can observe, we can go to a program and actually do observation on the program. And actually we can write down, we can keep track of and make notes about what we observe in the program. That's also a form of qualitative evaluation. Okay, so these types of evaluation, the qualitative types are the type that help us to describe what happens in the program. So, for example, we may give a survey to determine whether how satisfied were the participants with the program. Okay, so the participants say, okay, on a scale 1 to 5, they give a mean score of 4.9. So they're very satisfied with the program, but we don't know why. we don't know how they experienced the program. What is it that they liked about it? What was it that, what were the reasons why they found the program to be so successful, etc. That's where the qualitative part of the evaluation comes in. Then we can interview them, either in a group or individually. We can interview them. We can ask them, so tell me why you felt this program was so good. Oh, well, there's this and there's that, and blah, blah, blah. And then we can come up with a sort of overall description of how people experienced the program. So they gave it a high rating and they liked these different aspects about it. Okay. And so when we use both the quantitative and qualitative together, we often get a very sort of complete picture of how participants experience a program. Okay, so that's usually the best and most complete way of doing evaluation. Okay. And then there's also the input-output impact. So what inputs go into the program? What are the outputs? In other words, the immediate outputs, and then what is the impact on the community? Okay, that's another way of looking at evaluation. I'm gonna cover a few of these models of evaluation in a little while. Okay, so just hang with me. All right, so the purpose, as we've kind of already discussed, we collect data on the performance of the program. All right, we analyze the data, and we compare the findings with the objectives of the program. Okay, so this is why our objectives are so important, right? And so we talked about the way of writing objectives, the smart way of writing objectives. That's the reason why, because we want to be able to determine whether we've achieved those things that we said we would achieve. Okay, so there's no point in doing those objectives without actually evaluating to compare to see whether you've achieved those objectives. And the only way to do that is through evaluation, all right? And so that's essentially the purpose, is to determine whether we have achieved the objectives of the program. Okay, so for example, here's an example program. Now this is called a logic model, and it's a very handy way of doing a program plan. So if you're going to plan out a program, this is a very simple one. They can be much more elaborate than this, logic models, but this is called a logic model for a program. Okay, so you can see there at the top of the pyramid is the overall aim of the program. Now that's what we would refer to as impact. Okay, so when we talk about impact, what we are talking about is this thing here. All right. Oh, I can't use my pencil. All right, so this is impact. All right. And here you can see in this program, it's a youth program, or it's a sort of youth community program. Young people positively engaged in the community. Now that's not an individual or a separate indicator of a program. That's like what you want to see at the end of the day, or that's what you want to see 2 or 3 years down the line. You want to see, generally speaking, young people more engaged in the community. Okay, that's impact. That's big impact. Okay, but the specific outcomes of the program, right? So your specific program, your small program, whatever it is going to have specific outcomes that you want to achieve, so that the impact can occur later. Okay, and so that's what you get here. You see in this part here. Okay, so in the second part here, we get the intended outcomes of the program, or indicators. Another way, in evaluation language, we would say indicators. So these are the indicators that the program was a success. Okay, so more positive community attitude to young people. So people are more positive about young people. Young people are more confident about expressing opinions. Okay, so they're turning from introverts to extroverts. Okay, increased skills, right? Increased skills for young people. Young people are more aware of options available. Okay, now what do you notice about each of these outcomes? In comparison to this one here, this big one, what do you notice about these? Do you notice anything but the way that they're worded? I'll give you a hint. Some of the words here. So what do you notice? Anything?
Is it positive outcomes?
Yes, that's right. They're positive outcomes. So these are the intended positive outcomes of the program. Yep. This is what they want to see at the end of the program. Okay. But what do you notice about the language as opposed to the language here? And I've underlined the key words here. Remember, these are outcomes. These are indicators of program success. Remember our SMART objective, the M is for measurable. Measurable. Right? So our objectives and our outcomes should be measurable. So you can see the language here. More positive community attitude, increased skills, more confident, more aware. In other words, these are measurable outcomes. We can give them surveys and find out whether the young people are more aware of their options, are more confident, if they feel that their skills have increased. Okay? So the outcomes of the program here that we are trying to measure are all measurable, right? Because we can determine whether they're all these things, right? Whether they're more skillful, they're more aware, more confident, etc. But this one is hard to measure. This impact one, hard to measure. How do you really know whether young people are more positively engaged in the community? I mean, there are ways you could probably measure it, but it's more difficult to measure, okay? Yeah, specificity. Exactly, Nabila, that's very good. Right. Things are increasing. So it's increasing, and therefore, if it's increasing, we can measure it. Okay? Because it's more specific, like Nabila said. It's more specific, and it's and again, the language is written in such a way, the objectives, they're written in such a way that they can be measured. We have ways of measuring them. Okay? So that's the difference between the outcomes and the impact. Okay? This is the long-term impact. This is like the vision. You know, you want to have a community that's more something. You know, at the end of the day, your long-term vision, we want to have a more peaceful community, or we want to have a wealthier community, or we want to have a community that people are more harmonious. They get along better, you know, or we have a community that's cleaner, right? That's more environmentally conscious. You know, these are the long-term visions for the program. But to get there, you have to start with these smaller outcomes that can be measured, right? To know whether you're headed in this direction. Okay, and then to get here, so this is like 1, 2, 3. To get to 2, we need, of course, our number 1, which is the activities. All right. And so this is also what they were referring to before as inputs, outputs, and impact. So you have the inputs here, right? And you have the output or outcomes, same thing. Then you have as I already have impact there. Okay, so it's like inputs, outputs, impact. And you can kind of see the progression. All right, so these are the activities: community action days, start and facilitate a youth club. All right, recruit, check, and train volunteers, peer support, encourage, train young people as volunteers. So you're gonna have all these program activities, and so these are the inputs. And after we've done inputted these for a while, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 1 year, we look to see whether these things have increased, right? The indicators, whether the indicators have gone up. And as a result, we can say that we hope that there will be, or we look forward to there being greater impact in terms of this. Okay. Now this one, maybe we can't measure it right away. Maybe we have to wait a year or two to measure this impact one. Okay, because like I said, it takes time for this one to occur. Okay, so this is called a logic model. Logic model. All right. I should write it here, but so this is you see this is a lot of programs they put together these logic models when they want to apply for like funding or grants, right? So people can see the logic of the program, the thinking behind the program. How are you going to get from A to B? How are you going to get from B to C? How are you say your program is going to increase engagement of young people in the community. Well, we want to see how you're going to get there, right? And that's what the logic model does. It shows how you're going to do that, all right? So logic models are very important when it comes to program development. All right, let me just erase all my marks. Any questions about that? Okay, so the result. So for example, if you have these objectives, you have these measurable objectives, right? As we mentioned before, the using the SMART approach, you can make and draw these conclusions, that 80% or 90% of the objective was achieved, all right? And then these results you can use for your follow-up activities. So if you find that a certain objective was 90% achieved, that's pretty darn good, right? That's really good. And so then you may know that, okay, this is something I want to do again in the future, because look, I've achieved the objective 90%, very high. And so this one seems to be very successful. So then we're going to do this one again next time, all right? So again, it gives us an idea of whether our program was successful. Oh, sorry, there's a question for Hannah said. So the logic model is like from bottom to up. It doesn't always, they don't always draw the logic models like that. A lot of times they draw them this way, going to the arrow. So they start with the inputs here, and then they, output, and then impact. I can show you some more examples of logic models, but they're often done this way as well, sort of like to show the linear kind of progression. Okay, so you can, how you draw it, how you illustrate it is really up to you. So it doesn't really matter as long as you sort of show the logic of the program. Okay, I'll try and find it. I have other examples I can show. Okay, so evaluation is also important this is a really important one, especially if you're getting funding. Proof for budget and resource utilization. Okay, so a lot of programs, community development programs, receive funds from sponsors, whether it's an NGO, a foundation, yayasan, something or other, institution, government, right, ministry, they give funds, right? So they want to know whether their funding, their money is actually being used, whether it's being used effectively, right? So the participants must be accountable. So there has to be accountability. So without evaluation, there's no accountability. Okay. And so like my experience in the US, like I was referring to before, we were receiving funding from the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation is a major education-based foundation in the US. Okay. So the car, right? The Ford brand of cars. Okay. So it's an American car brand. They make Creta. So Ford has their own foundation as well. They're a big company, but they also have a foundation, and they give lots of money for these types of educational programs, NGOs and stuff. So Ford was giving us a lot of money. And in fact, I think every year we were getting over $2 million in US dollars to do our programs. And so they wanted to know whether their funds were being used in an effective manner. Right? So what was our program really having an effect? Was their money really having an impact? That's what they want to know. Okay. So of course, without evaluation, there's no way for them to know. There's no way to know whether the money is actually having an impact. Okay. And if you notice, if you look at the media, if you look at a lot of newspaper articles, and we see this a lot in Malaysia actually, there's always controversial and social media as well. But there's always these sort of controversial comments people make about, oh, this government program is a waste of money, or this program is, not having any effect or any impact, or, the government is spending so much money on this, and look, it's not having any impact, blah, blah, blah. You see this all the time. One of the reasons why they have these kinds of comments and discussion is because they don't do comprehensive evaluation. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. If they did comprehensive evaluation, they would know whether they were having an impact, whether the programs were having an impact. But because they take evaluation so lightly, they don't take it seriously, therefore, they can never really be sure whether the programs were successful, whether the money was well spent, right? So if you're a taxpayer, you pay taxes to the government, right? So maybe you guys are too young to pay taxes, I don't know. But I pay taxes every year. I pay to the government in Malaysia, even though I'm not Malaysian, but I work here, right? And I get paid by the government, actually. So I get paid, and then I have to give a certain amount of my money for taxes. And so that money is supposed to be spent on, government programs. So as a taxpayer, I should know, or I would like to know, whether the money the government is spending to help the B40 or whatever the program is, I'd like to know whether it's having an effect. Okay, so for budgeting, it's very important. Evaluation, it's very, very important. Okay, any change brought about by the program should be proven, right? So how do you know if it's effective if you don't evaluate? Okay, how do you know whether the money is being used well? Okay, and so if you get most funds that come from NGOs or foundations, they will require evaluations. They will require it because they have to know whether the money is being used with having an impact. Okay, evaluation is also a data bank. Okay, so like we mentioned before, to do evaluation, you need to collect data. It's a form of research. So you need to do surveys, you need to do observations, okay? You need to do all these kind of qualitative types of data collection, interviews, etc. All right, so you will collect data and you will have what's called a data bank, all right, where you have a set of data that can be used. And that data, if you run the program regularly, like if you do a program and it's run every year, the reason they call it a data bank is because the data keeps accumulating. Every year you put in and you enter new data into that data bank, and then you can actually see how a program is improving or it's getting worse, how participants experience the program, whether it's changing or not. So you can really monitor and track to see whether the program is a worthwhile program, right? So not just once, but over a series of period of time. Okay, so evaluation is also a data bank because it requires collecting data, okay, and a lot of data in some cases. So good evaluations, they must be based on up-to-date data. Okay, so the data should be up to date. It should be done regularly. Okay, so a good example of a data bank is Department of Statistics. So Malaysia has its own Department of Statistics. I don't know if you know that. And of course, they collect data all the time. That's their job. The job is just to do continuous data collection on the various sectors of development. So if you go to their website, the Department of Statistics, you'll see that they have all kinds of data. Let me see if I can just pull it up quickly. Okay, so we have our Department of Statistics Malaysia website. All right, so I don't know, maybe some of you have already used this from time to time. Okay, here's the portal. And so they'll always have this here, latest release, again, because their job is to collect continuous data, right? So like every month they have new data to present. And so they have the key indicators here. This is like for economics, for the economy. right? Key indicators. So balance of trade, consumer price index, GDP. We talked about GDP earlier in the semester, right? So $343 billion is Malaysia's GDP. Okay. And what is GDP again? Just for refresher's sake, who remembers? Nobody remembers the GDP?
Gross domestic product, is it?
That's what it means. That's what the acronym means. Yeah. But what is it? It's an indicator of what? Remember? Who remembers? Nobody? It's an indicator of domestic economic output for the year. Okay, so how much economic output has occurred within the borders of Malaysia? Remember, this gross domestic product does not include any monies coming in from overseas, right? It's just the amount of production within the country. Okay, so it's one of the indicators of development that we talked about earlier in the year, right? But the gross national income is another indicator, remember? And that one includes the monies that are sent back from overseas, right? So for example, Petronas is doing business in Sudan and in Kazakhstan, and they're sending money back into the country. That's included in the gross national income, but not in the GDP. Okay, so just to refresh on that one, I can see you guys didn't refresh. Okay, anyway, so this is the website for the Department of Statistics, and they have all kinds of statistics here for us people to use. Of course, it's mostly for the government, but the public can also use it as well. Okay, so as you can see here, there's a portion of the website for the public. All right, and so they have different reports that we can refer to. All right. Okay, so e-statistic, all the different stats. They're on social media, etc. Okay, so I'm not going to go into this in depth, but here, some of the statistics they have here, you can see here, census data. They have different types of statistics on demand. So you can do it by theme. So for example, say you want to know about crime, right? I'm sure they have crime statistics here. Sustainable development goals, right? Malaysia at a glance is like the overview of the major statistics in the country. Okay, so anyway, just to share that a little bit. All right, so let's get back to our okay, so statistics department, and then digital facilities, computer facilitates the management of data. So of course, now much of the data is managed using different technologies. Evaluation is also a strategy for management. That's again, if people are using it the right way, it helps management to make a lot of important decisions. All right, especially planning and implementation of programs. Okay, so management uses resources. They have to use resources in a very careful manner. And to avoid wastage of resources, they need to know how a program is performing. Okay, so it helps to do evaluation so that they can manage their resources wisely. Okay, so for example, if they allocate 5 million a year for a certain program, they need to know, well, is that 5 million all being used? How is it being used? Is there any wastage? Is there any money left over? Those kind of things. How do you know that unless you do evaluation? You can't know. You cannot know. Okay. So this is another reason why evaluation needs to be done, is to know how much. So for management to decide how much do they budget for a specific program. And again, we see this in government. For those of us who work in government, we see oftentimes that government does not do this, and so that's why they have a hard time determining budgets, right? They often over budget or they under budget because they don't make use of evaluation data to determine, okay, so what's our budget going to be this year for this program, right? There's no evaluation done previously in previous years. So it's like a guessing game. Well, I don't know, last year was 3 million. Maybe this year we up it a little bit to 3.5 million. Okay, but why? There's no basis for that. They're just guessing because they don't do enough evaluation. All right. And so it ends up money being wasted. The taxpayers' money is being wasted, etc. Okay, so management needs to be very careful with its money, its resources, and it needs to know. So evaluation helps management to strategize. All right. It gives them this ongoing information about the program, and they can even adjust their budgets midway through the program. If they're doing formative evaluation, like we mentioned before, the formative evaluation that's ongoing, if we can do that type of evaluation, then even in the middle of the program, they can decide, oh, we need to spend more money on this, or we need to, reduce the amount of allocation here because it's being wasted, etc. But if you just wait to the very end of the program, like say it's a 3-year program and you just wait to the very end, then you could have maybe reduced the wastage if you had done a formative evaluation, and you would have realized that midway through the program, we're wasting money here or whatever. Okay, so management needs to know these things, and it's only through evaluation that they can know these things. All right, so is the program formulated according to the problems and interests of the community? Okay, that's a big question, especially for government programs. Is it really being formulated in the interest of the community, or is it being formulated in the interest of some politician and their sort of personal agenda? All right, just as an example. What activities should be prioritized? Okay, so what activities do they use? What should be the action if there is natural calamity? All right. And so if you have a sudden, natural calamity, like a sudden unexpected calamity, the flood season suddenly arises, management has to make decisions about those things, right? So it helps to have this ongoing formative evaluation. Maybe it's a monthly process. Every month there's a sort of check-in, a qualitative assessment, a qualitative evaluation every month to know how the program is going. Okay, that can be built into a program, where you have a regular check-in with the participants, right, and that sort of thing. Okay, so this can really help with decision making. Okay, so that's for management. Now for program improvement, and we've touched on this already. Evaluation helps to determine the weaknesses of the program. All right, so we want to know if it's not working well. If the program is not working well, why? Why is it not working well? Okay, why are we not achieving our objectives? That's probably the biggest question that most community development program developers, the people that are actually developing the programs, this is the biggest question they have often. Why are our programs not meeting their objectives? Okay, and again, this is something that's talked about all the time. If you look at any kind of program the government does, there's always this question. Now, I'm referring to government just because the government programs are usually the ones that we hear about, like in the media and social media and stuff. They're the ones that get publicized. We don't hear much about small community programs or programs done by NGOs. So it's hard to use those as examples, but inevitably all programs at some point will ask this question: what is the gap between what's happening in the program and what is the desired status? Okay, so why is a program falling short of its objectives? Why are we not meeting our objectives? Okay, so these questions can be answered by using evaluation techniques. They can be answered. Okay, if people want to get the answers. Okay, so we use, as I already mentioned, we use the evaluation for future activities. All right, or maybe we need to change policy. All right, so currently our JPPL staff, like Prof. Ismi, Dr. Murshid, myself, Dr. Siti Raba'ah, we're all involved in a very big project for the Selangor state government. Okay, we are developing, we're first evaluating, and then we're developing the new state youth policy for Selangor. We're working with the state government to do that. So the state government, especially the YB, who's in charge of the portfolio for youth affairs in the state, they're concerned with the existing youth policy. And in fact, we were involved in that as well 5 years ago. But they're concerned with the existing youth policy as they feel that it's not that relevant anymore because times have changed. The situation for youth has changed in the state, and so they want to have a new youth policy. So if we're going to come up with a new youth policy, what's the first thing we need to do? Who can tell me? If they want us, they're asking us to come up with a new youth policy, but what's the first thing we have to actually do before we start? Anybody want to venture a guess? How do we start that process? What's the first thing we do? Before working on the new youth policy, what's the first thing we have to do?
I think maybe, can you hear me, Prof?
Yes, go ahead, Hadi.
Okay, all right. Basically, I think what government can do is they can maybe do some research first. Research in terms of maybe what Belia right now, basically, yeah. So basically, if they know the resources or they know what's the thing that the maybe teenagers or maybe the other young adults, maybe they can know and they can do a confirmation whether the new act or new undang-undang can be more attached to them.
This one is actually belum undang. This is dasar saja. So we start with dasar. Dasar sebelum undang. Undang is late. Undang is like the last thing they change. So they like the Youth Act. They have belia, Akta Belia. Akta Belia is undang. But before you get to Akta Belia, you have to have dasar belia. So we're just focusing on dasar. But you're right, Hadi. That's a good answer. So first, feedback from the youth. But the first thing is, yes, it's feedback from the youth. But the first thing is we want to know what was wrong with the previous policy. So we want to first evaluate the previous policy. The old policy, we have to know. So yes, what you're saying is true. We want to talk to the young people. So we have been doing a lot of research with the young people in the state. We've done focus group discussions. We've done surveys. We want to first find out what are the needs of the youth, right? And then compare that to the old policy and see where does the old policy fall short, right? Where does the old policy, how is the old policy not meeting the needs of the youth today? Right? So that from that, to understand that gap, then we can design the new policy, right? So for example, nowadays, as you can imagine right now, because we've been doing this research during COVID, so one of the major concerns for young people in the state of Selangor right now is, of course, mental health. It's a big issue. So mental health awareness, mental health knowledge about mental health services, access to services, where to go for services, and such. So the previous policy, the old policy, has very little, if nothing, on mental health services, right? So we've already identified an important need. In our discussions with young people and the research we've done, the evaluation we've done of the previous policy, we found that there's very little on mental health. In talking to young people, doing the research before we do the new policy, we've also found that mental health is a big issue. So that's one area, and there's others as well. That's just an example. One area where the new policy has to be better than the old policy in terms of addressing the needs of young people in the state. Right? And so then we can tell the state government, okay, look, young people, they really need these mental health support services. Right? And so then the government can then work to provide those services for the youth. Okay, so this is the real importance. Now, had we not done that research, that evaluation, had we not done it, we just take the old policy and then we use the old policy to write a new policy. Essentially, we just repeat the same policy without doing that evaluation. Then what happens? You can imagine what happens. You have a very ineffective policy. You have the state government not knowing how to meet the needs of the youth. right? And they're probably going to then implement programs that are not relevant to the needs of the youth. Okay? So it's a very, very important process. Evaluation is very important. Okay? And this is, you can see, this is what happens all the time, especially in government. Because they don't do evaluation, they just come up with policies. You know, the minister sits down with his advisors and they come up with a nice policy. Sounds very chante on paper. Tapi it's not at all relevant to the needs of the people. Because no participation. There's no evaluation. Okay, so this is why evaluation must be involved, must be part of the process. Okay, so if not, you get duplication. And duplication of ineffective programs is the worst thing because it's just wasting people's money, wasting people's time. Sometimes, you know, they hire, sometimes, okay, let's take the, I'm just gonna use this as an example. I'm not trying to trash the government in any way. No, I'm just using this as an example. The Malaysian education blueprint, okay, which was a major policy exercise for the Ministry of Education. Okay, it was a 10 to 15 year blueprint plan for the education sector in the country. The Ministry of Education paid millions of ringgit to hire an outside consultant to help them with that policy. Okay. However, those who were working on the policy in the inside of the ministry know that there was not a lot of evaluation done before they did the policy. So they may have done some evaluation. They may have talked to certain groups, teachers, parents, like that. But there was a certain limitation in the sense that they did not do as extensive research on development of that policy. Okay. So this often happens is that they'll go out of their way, spend a lot of money to hire these very expensive consultants to help them write policies, but they really lack that evaluative part of it. Okay. Now, again, like I said, I'm not saying they didn't do any evaluation. They did do evaluation. They did talk to, usually what they'll do is they'll talk to the special interest groups, like the teachers unions, or they'll talk to like the parents, PIBG associations, right? So they'll do some background work, of course. So Jesse asked the question, maybe you should start with getting the feedback from the youth. Yeah, that's exactly what we tried to do. Okay, so hopefully, inshallah, that's our hope is that it'll create a more relevant policy, you know, a policy that's more relevant to the needs of the young people, inshallah. Okay, so in the evaluation process, there's basically 4 major steps, 4 major phases, which is to define the focus of the evaluation. Okay, so basically, what are we evaluating? What do we want to evaluate? Define the focus, right? And if you've written good program objectives, then this one can be easily addressed, right? So you know what the focus is based on the program objectives. All right. So that's defining the focus. So what to evaluate? All right. What to evaluate? Okay. So based on program objectives, and then collect data. So we've identified what we want to evaluate. Now we have to go out and actually collect the data. So qualitative data, quantitative data, a combination, one or the other. Okay. Sorry, I also forgot to mention here in the focused evaluation, what else do we have to consider that's very important related to focus of the evaluation? What did I miss? We just talked about it and I forgot to mention it. What's very important in terms of not only what you're evaluating, in terms of the objectives, but what else is very, very important? What was that? Anyone? See comments, I see chat. who's involved. Yep, that's part. Okay, very good, Nabila. So who? So who will be included? Yep, that's good. What else? Anything else?
Maybe can it be measured?
Okay. Yeah, what actually, that's a good question. What can be measured? Yeah, you have to answer that question. What can be measured and then how, right? And how you can measure it. So before you get to the actual data collection part here, like, yeah, you're good. You're right, Hadi. You have to identify what's going to be measured and how. Okay. There's one more big one that I'm thinking of that you guys haven't said yet. Remember, in terms of the phases of evaluation and when we conduct the evaluation. Okay. So in terms of, are we going to do just the summative evaluation at the end? Are we going to include a process evaluation? You know, are we going to do that initial assessment? So this would be like the type of evaluation. Okay, process, outcome, summative. So I'll put that formative. So we mentioned formative. So the formative is the one that is done early on, and it's ongoing, right? So as you're going, you're checking in maybe every month, every 2 months, just to see how the process is going. The outcome, to see whether you've achieved the specific outcomes, and then the summative would be the impact. So later, if you want to know the impact of the program, we would do that sort of summative evaluation. Okay. We're getting all squished together, these things. Oops, sorry. Okay, so yeah, so there's several questions that reflect this, are reflected in this defining the focus. Okay, several of these questions. And then we have the collecting data. So these questions will answer the question about collecting data. So if you decide, okay, we're going to do a formative evaluation and a summative evaluation, both during and after, and we're going to collect both quality and quantity. So the formative evaluation, as we're going, we're going to collect qualitative data. So every month, we're going to sit down with 2 or 3 of the participants and just check in to see how the program is going, what problems they're facing, etc. And then at the very end, we're going to do a survey for the summative evaluation or the outcome evaluation. We're going to do a survey. Okay, so you can specify at which phase you're going to use which type of data collection. Okay, so that's data collection. So then we collect all the data, and then in the third phase, we will make our analysis. Okay, so we have to come to some conclusion and make a judgment. What's the conclusion? Is the program working? Is it not working? What are the problems that they're having, that the program's having? How can we improve it, etc., etc. Okay, so all those kind of questions. And then finally is reporting. All right, so this is where we share our results. And so this one would be, first will be the stakeholders, right? So those who have a stake in the program, and the funders. They're your first, those who are of most concern when it comes to reporting. You want to report back to anybody that was involved in the program, anybody that has a stake in the program, anybody that would be concerned with the with the program itself and the outcome. They should be reported to, as well as, of course, the funder. So the funder who supported the program has to be also the first recipient of the report. Okay, and so that's your cycle. That is the cycle of the evaluation process, the basic process. And then, of course, from there, from what you've learned from your evaluation, you will feed that back into the program the next time it's done. Okay. Any questions about that? So I think we're just going to go a few more minutes until 1:30, and we'll stop for today. And then we'll finish this up next class. Okay, so let's just okay. So we've sort of already begun to discuss this, but here's just some additional information. So in terms of defining the focus, now these are good questions for you to use for your report, for your assignment, for your reporting, when you want to report on your evaluation, how you're going to evaluate your program. So these are really good questions that you want to ask, and you can include these in your report, the answer to these questions, obviously. So what you're going to, so for example, the first one, define the focus. What is the objective of the evaluation? Okay, so obviously, like we just said, it's to determine whether the program objectives were achieved. What criteria and indicators are you going to use for each criterion? Okay, so this is where you have to identify the indicators. And that, if you go back to the logic model there, you can see the example of the indicators, right? So for each objective of the program, right? So if the program is to increase knowledge, what indicators are you going to use to measure that, right? And so, you know, if the program aims to increase knowledge, you're going to have to find some sort of survey to measure their knowledge, right? And then you can run the evaluation that way, and then you can determine whether they've actually increased in their knowledge. Okay. So the first one, defining the focus, has to do with these questions, in addition to the ones we asked earlier. Okay, so like we just spoke about, what are the evidences, the data, and the sources of data? Okay, so we didn't mention sources of data. So you have to think about who you're going to collect the data from. Okay, and that depends on who's in the program. Who are the participants in the program, right? Are you also going to ask the staff? So for example, maybe the volunteers, one of you guys mentioned the volunteers before. Maybe you had volunteers that were helping to run the program. Are you going to include them in the evaluation? Okay, so that's a question you have to ask. Oftentimes we'll ask staff, the staff involved, ask them to evaluate as well. Okay, so the data as well as the sources of the data. Who are the evaluators? Are they going to be internal or external? Okay, this is another question that we didn't mention just now. All right, who's going to evaluate? Are you going to get somebody from outside to come in and evaluate? Or is it going to be someone from within, right? And of course, there are inherent, there's actually pros and cons to both of those. How are you going to report the results, and for whom? All right, so the reporting will be in what form, basically? Are you going to do presentations to the funders? Are you going to do a written report? Okay, who's going to get the results? The stakeholders, etc. Okay, so those questions can all be answered right off the bat. Okay, and then going and collecting the data, so evidence. All right, so once you've identified what criteria or what indicators you're going to use to evaluate, then you can go out and collect the data. Okay, so again, if you're looking just at specific outcomes like increase in knowledge, improvement in attitude, change in practice, maybe you can just use surveys for those, quantitative surveys. But if you're looking at something like, more of a formative evaluation, where you want to gauge the progress of the program over time, you may want to have, like I mentioned, like a monthly interview session or something, where you are trying to determine whether the program is running smoothly, whether the objectives are being achieved, and so forth. Okay, so how you do that is really up to you. Data are collected similar to data collection techniques in situational analysis or research. So survey, observation, document use. Okay, so we already discussed this, the different ways of collecting data. So do you guys know when to use like different types? Like, so for example, when would you use observation as a data collection method? What kind of objective would you be trying to answer with observation as your data collection method? Who can tell me? Anyone? What type of data do you, when you do observation, what are you observing? What kinds of things do you observe when you do observation? Anybody still there?
The result?
Result, what kind of result? What do you mean by result? So an observation,
Maybe,
go ahead.
yeah, maybe in terms of the result before and after you conduct the program, any changes happens or yeah.
So yeah, okay. So observation is where you go and you actually you watch, you observe an activity. Okay. So Farhana, yeah, good answer. That's a good answer. Participants' behavior and skill. Observation is an observation of external behavior. You cannot observe someone's thoughts. You cannot observe their attitudes, right? So Nabila, you got behavior and gestures. That would be good for observation, yes. Attitude requires an additional or a different type of approach, okay? Because an attitude is in someone's, it's internal to someone. I would never know Hadi's attitude towards this class just by looking at him in my Zoom. I mean, I can look at him and say, oh, he looks a little bored. So maybe but that wouldn't tell me if he has a bad attitude or not, or whether his attitude is, he's really motivated to learn or anything like that. I would never know that just by looking at Hadi on Zoom, right? So doing an external observation, I cannot answer that question. But if I wanted to observe whether Hadi was paying attention to my screen, right? That kind of behavior I can definitely do by observation. I can just watch him for the entirety of the class. I can video him and then watch him and then just record how he interacts with the screen. Okay. Same within a program. I can go and observe people during a program. I can observe how they behave in a program, right? But I can't really know their attitude unless I talk to them, unless I interview them, right? Only then I'm going to really understand their attitude. Okay, so yeah, Farhana and Nabil, that's good. Observations are for evaluating behavior. So we want to see how people act, how they behave. Okay, so how many times did they go to the field to pick the crops, for example? You can do that easily by observation. Okay. Surveys are good for similar to in interviews, where we want to understand people's attitudes or their knowledge or how they perceive things internally. Then we do things like survey and interviews. Okay. So it's important to have the right form of data collection to do the evaluation, depending on the objectives of the evaluation. Okay. So if we're evaluating behavior, then we want to do something like observation. For evaluating attitude or knowledge, we want to do something like a survey or an interview, right? If we want to evaluate their how their views of the program change over the course of the program, again, that would be something like we would do an interview or a survey, but over time, like every month or every 6 months, we do it with them and we look at the progress. We look at how it changes over time. Okay. So you need to be able to match the type of data collection for the objectives that you're measuring. All right, for the evaluation. Okay, so that's very important. Okay, I think we're going to stop there. I think it'd be a good place to stop. I'm sure everyone's kind of tired by now. So I'll stop here with step 2, and we will continue with step 3 next week. All right. And so this week, no homework, no activities. So you have the week off to spend on your other classes. Okay. All right. So is there anything else? Any final questions or comments? No? Okay. Well, if not, then have a good week and stay safe. And inshallah, we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Prof.
Isama. Jumpa lagi insyaallah.
Insyaallah. Okay, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Salam.